you think you are thinking right now. That voice reading these words, agreeing, resisting, analyzing, you call it me. You assume the thoughts forming in your awareness belong to you because they appear inside your head. It feels obvious. It feels intimate. It feels undeniable. But what if that feeling is only the final echo of processes that began long before you arrived? Long before your name. Long before your birth. Long before your species. Human beings have wrestled with this for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks spoke of logos, reason, language, and cosmic order woven into one idea. They wondered whether thinking was a human activity or a universal current flowing through everything. Plato suggested our highest ideas were not inventions, but recollections, memories of perfect forms glimpsed before birth. In parts of the East, Buddhist philosophers looked inward and searched for the thinker behind the thoughts. They found sensations, emotions, impulses, images, but no fixed thinker. Thought arose like clouds forming in the sky. The sky did not create the cloud. The conditions did. Then René Descartes declared, "I think, therefore I am." He believed thinking proved a thinker. It sounded unshakable. Yet centuries later, science began pressing against that certainty. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted a simple experiment. Volunteers were asked to move their wrist whenever they felt the urge. Electrodes measured brain activity and recorded the exact moment participants became consciously aware of deciding to move. The brain initiated the action roughly half a second before the person felt they chose it. The conscious decision arrived after the neural preparation had already begun. Later experiments using brain imaging showed something even more unsettling. Researchers could predict which option someone would choose several seconds before the person reported making a decision. The brain was already moving toward an outcome, while the conscious mind still believed it was open and undecided. It is as if consciousness receives a notification about a choice already set in motion. You may say that is only about simple movements, but your brain itself is an inheritance shaped over immense stretches of time. It is not a single structure, but layers built across evolutionary eras. The brainstem regulates survival functions, breathing, heartbeat, systems hundreds of millions of years old. The limbic system governs fear, attachment, desire. The cortex handles language, planning, logic. The part you call you is the newest addition. When fear strikes before reason can speak, older circuitry is acting. When emotion overrides logic, ancient wiring is louder. The cortex explains events after they unfold. It narrates. It rationalizes. But much of what it explains was initiated elsewhere. And evolution did not design your mind to discover truth. It designed it to survive. Pattern detection, cause and effect, quick judgments about threat or belonging. These were selected because they kept ancestors alive. The mind feels like a truth-seeking instrument, yet it is fundamentally tuned for survival. Even if you accept that biology shapes you, perhaps you still believe you independently form your thoughts from raw experience. But language itself stands between you and that assumption. Language does not merely label reality. It frames it. Cultures divide color differently. Some languages distinguish shades, others group together. The vocabulary available to you influences what distinctions you perceive quickly and clearly. Where there is no word, perception can blur. Where there is a word, a boundary sharpens. Every word you use to think was given to you. Parents, teachers, media, history, all contributed to the vocabulary shaping your inner dialogue. The categories you rely on were constructed before you learned them. Your mind is like a kitchen stocked long before you arrived. You may cook creatively, but you did not choose the ingredients or design the tools. Even feelings that seem beyond language quickly become organized by it. A raw sensation appears, and almost immediately the mind translates it into narrative. Language is not just an instrument of thought. It is the mold into which thought is poured. Then there is something even more intimate. Your thoughts are not sealed inside you. Neuroscience has shown that observing another person activates similar neural patterns as performing the action yourself. When you see someone in pain, regions associated with pain activate within you. When anxiety spreads through a room, nervous systems synchronize. You absorb more than you notice. Emotional atmospheres shape you. Repeated ideas become internal convictions. The tone of your earliest home may still echo in how you interpret the world. Your inner life carries traces of countless others. If biology, evolution, language, and social resonance all shape your thinking, then the question shifts. Perhaps the mind is less an isolated author and more an intersection, a meeting point of forces. Physics adds one more layer of mystery. Consciousness itself remains unexplained. Some thinkers propose that awareness may not be produced by the brain, but filtered through it, as if the brain were a receiver tuning into a more fundamental field. This idea remains speculative, yet it reminds us how little we truly understand about why matter experiences itself. Whether consciousness emerges from neurons or reflects a deeper property of the universe, one thing becomes clear. The processes that produced your present awareness stretch back through cosmic history. Stars forged the atoms in your body. Evolution shaped the nervous system. Culture shaped language. Relationships shaped emotional patterns. The thought occurring now is the latest ripple in a very long chain. This realization can feel destabilizing. It challenges the idea of total authorship. Yet it does not erase you. Because while you did not design the architecture, the configuration is uniquely yours. The exact combination of memories, words, fears, affections, perceptions, and interpretations occurring at this moment has never existed before. Billions of years of unfolding have converged into this singular arrangement. You may not be the original source of thought, but you are the only place where this specific pattern of thought is happening. The universe has evolved complexity capable of reflection. In you, matter contemplates itself. In you, ancient forces become aware of their own story. Perhaps the question is not whether you own your thoughts. Perhaps it is whether you can witness them clearly, not to control every impulse, but to observe the currents moving through you. When you look up at the night sky and feel wonder, that wonder carries evolutionary history, cultural language, borrowed metaphors, and neural preparation. Yet it is still occurring here, now, through you. You are not separate from the long chain that shaped you. You are its living continuation. And in that realization, something quiet and profound appears. Not absolute control, not isolated authorship, but participation. The cosmos unfolds. Through you, it notices itself unfolding. Now pause for a moment and notice something subtle happening inside you as you read this. The mind is not just absorbing ideas. It is reacting, comparing, defending, agreeing, resisting. It is trying to locate itself in the argument. It wants to secure a position. It wants to say, yes, this resonates, or no, this is exaggerated. That movement, that silent positioning feels like identity asserting itself, but look closer, even that. Reaction arises before you choose it. A sentence appears, and something in you tightens or opens. The shift happens first, the explanation comes second. There is a space between the arising of a thought and the story you tell about why it arose. Most people live so quickly inside the narration that they never examine the raw appearance itself. A memory surfaces, or did it come from a fear flickers? Why now an image intrudes? Who invited it? If you sit quietly and observe your mind, without interfering, you will discover something. Almost mechanical thoughts emerge unannounced. They assemble themselves. They dissolve. They are less like commands you issue and more like weather patterns passing through awareness. Imagine sitting beside a river. You do not create the water flowing past. You do not push each current into existence. You watch. And yet the river exists in relationship to you because you are there to perceive it. The mind may function in a similar way, a continuous stream shaped by terrain laid down long ago. Genes carved some of the riverbed. Early experiences deepened certain channels. Cultural narratives redirected flow toward specific basins. Trauma built dams. Habit reinforced currents. Repetition widened pathways. And now the stream moves with remarkable consistency. When you say, I am anxious, you are often describing a river flowing through familiar grooves. The body activates, the mind interprets the activation through learned language, and a self-concept forms around it. But what if anxiety is not owned? What if it is an ancient survival program activated under certain conditions? What if the sensation is impersonal energy shaped by evolutionary pressure designed to prevent exile from the tribe or physical harm in the wild? The moment you label it mind, you fuse identity with process. Consider how many of your preferences were installed before you examined them, your taste in music influenced by what played in your home, your political leanings nudged by the emotional tone of authority figures, your sense of humor shaped by what elicited approval. In childhood, your posture influenced by how safe or unsafe the world once felt, your ambitions guided by which behaviors were rewarded. Even rebellion often defines itself against something inherited, which means it still orbits what came before. The mind builds coherence, it stitches together fragments into a narrative of continuity. It says, this is my personality, my history, my belief system. Yet neuroscience suggests that the sense of a unified self is constructed moment by moment. Distributed networks coordinate to produce the feeling of ownership. The brain integrates sensory input, memory, emotion, and prediction into a seamless story. The story is convincing because it is constant, but constancy does not equal authorship. It equals repetition. Close your eyes and try to choose your next thought in advance. Decide what it will be before it appears. You may attempt to plan it, but when the thought actually forms, there is a slight gap between intention and arrival. It materializes fully shaped. You witness it. In that witnessing lies a clue. Awareness observes thinking. Awareness is not identical to the content of thinking. The content shifts endlessly. Awareness remains. Some contemplative traditions have pointed to this for centuries. They suggest that the sense of being a thinker is a layer added on top of the simple fact of experiencing. Thoughts happen, perceptions happen, emotions happen. The label "I think" is applied afterward like a watermark stamped onto flowing water. This does not mean you are powerless. It means power may be misunderstood. Freedom might not mean originating every impulse. It may mean relating differently to impulses that arise. If anger appears, you can either merge with it or observe it. If desire surfaces, you can chase it blindly or examine its roots. If fear activates, you can identify entirely with the narrative it generates or question the assumptions fueling it. Responsibility becomes more nuanced. You did not design the initial conditions, but you participate in how patterns continue. Every time you react in a familiar way, you strengthen certain neural pathways. Every time you pause, you introduce variability. Neuroplasticity reveals that the brain rewires through repetition. Attention is not just passive noticing, it is sculpting. By placing awareness on certain processes, you gradually alter their likelihood of recurring. Think of it as gardening rather than engineering. You did not choose the soil composition or the climate. Yet through consistent tending, you influence what flourishes and what withers. Weeds grow easily because they are evolutionarily efficient. Certain fears propagate quickly because they once ensured survival, but new growth is possible through deliberate cultivation. Language again plays a critical role. The words you choose internally shape perception. If you describe yourself as broken, your mind searches for evidence to confirm it. If you describe yourself as learning, the same experiences become data rather than verdicts. Cognitive psychology demonstrates that framing alters emotional response. The label attached to a sensation influences its trajectory. A racing heart interpreted as excitement feels different than the same sensation labeled panic. The body signal may be identical. The meaning changes everything. Social resonance continues long after childhood. The people you spend time with calibrate your nervous system. If you surround yourself with chronic outrage, your baseline arousal shifts upward. If you immerse yourself in curiosity and thoughtful dialogue, your mind mirrors that rhythm. Digital environments amplify this effect. Algorithms feed you content aligned with previous engagement, reinforcing belief structures and emotional tones. Your feed becomes an echo chamber, shaping what thoughts feel normal. So where does agency reside? In the thin but powerful capacity to notice, to question, to redirect attention, to choose environments intentionally, to refine language consciously, to practice responses repeatedly until new patterns stabilize. Agency may not be absolute authorship, but it is participatory influence. There is also humility in recognizing how interconnected thinking is. Instead of clinging to rigid certainty, you begin to see beliefs as provisional constructions shaped by countless inputs. Compassion grows because you realize others are also intersections of forces. They did not choose their early conditioning any more than you did. Their reactions arise from layered histories, just as yours do. Understanding this does not excuse harmful behavior, but it contextualizes it. It invites dialogue rather than dehumanization. At the cosmic scale, the same pattern holds. You are composed of atoms forged in stellar cores, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, once part of exploding stars, now arranged into neural circuits contemplating existence. The brain is matter organized in such complexity that it generates subjective experience that alone is extraordinary, regardless of whether consciousness is fundamental or emergent. The fact remains that through this biological architecture, the universe has achieved reflection. Reflection carries responsibility. The capacity to model the future allows ethical consideration. You can simulate outcomes, anticipate suffering, evaluate long-term consequences, even if impulses arise automatically. The reflective layer can assess them. That assessment influences subsequent action, which alters external reality, which feeds back into collective conditions, which shape future minds. The loop is immense, but real. Imagine the ripple effect of a single reframed thought. If instead of interpreting criticism as attack, you interpret it as information, the resulting emotional cascade changes. Your response shifts, the relationship dynamic shifts, the memory encoded shifts, the future expectation shifts. Over time, entire personality trajectories can pivot from small but repeated reinterpretations. This is why practices like meditation, journaling, therapy, and philosophical inquiry matter. They slow down the automatic identification with mental content. They create distance between awareness and narrative. That distance is not emptiness, it is space in space. There is possibility. You are neither the sole author nor a helpless puppet. You are a dynamic process embedded within larger processes. You inherit constraints, yet exercise modulation. You receive thoughts, yet influence which ones you nurture. You resonate with others, yet contribute your own tone to the collective field. Consider creativity. Artists often describe ideas arriving rather than being forced. A melody appears, a metaphor surfaces, a solution emerges. After incubation, the conscious mind prepares the ground, but insight feels gifted from somewhere beyond deliberate control. That somewhere may simply be unconscious integration operating beneath awareness. It may also reflect participation in broader cultural currents. Either way, the experience underscores that the mind is not a linear command center issuing orders at will. It is a complex adaptive system. Complex systems exhibit emergence. Patterns arise that cannot be predicted from individual components alone. Neurons firing collectively generate consciousness. Though no single neuron contains it, societies generate norms. Though no individual designs the entire structure, ecosystems self-organize through feedback loops. Without central authority, perhaps the sense of self is an emergent property of interacting subsystems rather than a singular controller. If so, then the question shifts from who am I as separate originator to what am I as dynamic pattern? What values do I reinforce? What habits do I encode? What emotional climates do I propagate? Because every interaction becomes both expression and input. There is also awe in recognizing scale. Your worries feel enormous because they are experienced intimately, yet zoom out, and you see layers of context, family lineage stretching back through centuries, biological evolution spanning eons, planetary formation, orbiting a star within a galaxy among billions. The fragility of individual identity contrasts with the vast continuity of matter and energy, yet meaning does not vanish with scale. It transforms. Meaning becomes participation rather than dominance. When you look at the night sky, you are seeing light that traveled for thousands or millions of years. Photons entered your eyes, triggering electrical signals interpreted by neural networks, shaped by evolution, shaped by stellar chemistry, shaped by cosmic expansion. The act of looking completes a circuit. Billions of years in the making. The universe is not only out there, it is reorganized here into perception. So perhaps the deepest shift is this: instead of asking, are these my thoughts, ask, how are these thoughts arising? What conditions support them? What histories do they carry? What futures might they influence? Curiosity replaces ownership. Awareness replaces assumption. In that curiosity, there is liberation, not the fantasy of absolute control, but the quiet power of alignment, aligning behavior with chosen values, aligning environment with desired growth, aligning language with clarity, aligning attention with what nourishes rather than depletes. You may never trace a thought back to its ultimate origin. The chain is too vast. But you can observe the link currently in your hands. You can decide how gently or harshly to speak internally. You can question inherited narratives. You can expose yourself to diverse perspectives, expanding linguistic and conceptual boundaries, you can cultivate emotional regulation, strengthening the cortex's capacity to mediate older impulses. Each of these acts is small, yet small adjustments in complex systems produce nonlinear outcomes. Over time, the river carves new channels, the garden shifts composition, the kitchen experiments with new recipes using existing ingredients in novel combinations. The voice reading this now may feel slightly different than it did at the beginning. Perhaps there is more spaciousness, perhaps more skepticism, perhaps more wonder. Whatever the reaction, notice that it arose. Notice that you are aware of it, that awareness is constant even as content changes. You are the meeting point of biology, culture, relationship, and cosmos. But you are also the witnessing of that meeting, the intersection, and the illumination of it, the pattern and the perception of pattern. In that dual recognition, humility and dignity coexist. Humility, because you are shaped by forces beyond comprehension. Dignity, because those forces culminate uniquely in this conscious moment. No other configuration holds exactly your memories, your questions, your tone of wonder. So continue observing, continue refining, continue expanding the language available to you, continue choosing environments wisely, continue pausing before reaction, continue looking at the sky and inward with equal curiosity. The story of thinking did not begin with you, and it will not end with you yet. Through you it becomes articulate for a brief luminous interval. In that interval, you can cultivate clarity, compassion, and courage. You can participate in shaping the next layer of inheritance for minds yet unborn. Thought flows, awareness notices, influence, adjust. The universe unfolds through countless intersections, one of which is reading these words right now. And in that simple act, the ancient cosmos bends inward, recognizing itself once more.